I did it again.
Yeah, I know you like doing that. That's fine.
I'm just going to start doing it just to see what you do. Like if I just leave you on there, I mean, not like you can't take yourself out.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I'll just start ranting. And in fact, I'll just go on a little 1-minute rant right here to start the show. You know, I'm still upset after that last show we did with Mary, and just the sexuality in the schools, the perpetration, how long it's been happening, the Good Old Boys Club. You know, a lot of people have kind of contacted me. They're like, Michael, what do we do? I just don't know what to do. And I'll just tell you right here what to do. You know, there's so much stuff out there, and there's people like you, Jenny, and like Julianne that have immense and vast amounts of knowledge. You guys are highly intelligent. You can hit so many different areas. But for the regular person that's just so overwhelmed, what we have to do is just pick one single thing, whether it's a library book, whether it's, you know, school, you can't go in your kid's school lunch, whether it's something to do with the election, whether it's something to do with child trafficking, whatever it is, just pick one single thing and make that your focus and learn everything you can about it, attack it, write about it, become a citizen journalist. I mean, really, citizen press, it's like Mary said, we have to have community pressure on these people, on these legislators, on these school board members, city councils, because they're going to continue to surveil us, do whatever they want to do, you know, without any kind of pressure. And unless we just take on one single focus, one single thing, then we can start making a difference.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. Maybe you ought to start every show with a rant.
Yeah. But I want people to understand they don't have to be so overwhelmed. Yes, there's a million things and everything is so bad. But let's just pick one single thing and just go after it. You know, make the difference on that one single thing.
Well, but let me point out something too, though, on your rant here, which is completely legitimate. Sometimes too, we're in a position where in a lot of cases, we really honestly can't do anything until we get a whole bunch of people behind us, right? I mean, it is kind of like the pitchfork and torches thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we started doing this podcast last year, most of it was because, the reason was because I felt like God was saying my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so even before you take on something, I do believe that God wants people to know what's going on, because awareness can lead to a lot of things, right? So even if you just start being aware, even if you just say, oh my gosh, I don't want to believe this is happening, but I'm going to look this up, or I'm going to look into this, you know, that I think is the best start, right?
Yeah.
Because then when we're ready to do something, we're all right there and we're on the same page and we have that knowledge, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll give you just a little example of that, and Julianne will probably appreciate this when she comes on. When they came to put in the smart meter at my house,
I almost did a spit take because I love this story. Go ahead. Did I lose you? What happened to Michael? Oh, I think they got him with the smart meter. I'm going to bring on Julianne. Julianne, do you think they got him with the smart meter?
I think they did. They must have. That is one thing they do not want to talk about. They don't want people refusing those smart meters.
Nope. So I think that's what may have happened. They just did not want him. Is he back?
He's back.
Am I
He's
back on?
back. Yeah. What happened to
was that-
you?
Did I go out on my side?
You did. Julianne and I believe
Wow.
that the smart meter police came and
Yeah.
shut
Well,
you down.
I'll finish that real quick. So they kept coming to my house, and literally, I said, look, I don't want a device that's on my house that I can't turn off. That's gonna, I said, is this a two-way device? Do you have communication two-way here? They're like, yes. I said, okay. I said, well, it's going to be a constant surveillance coming out of my house, telling you everything that I'm doing or what, recording whatever. And he's like, well, and he goes, well, everything's surveilled. And I go, and he goes, well, your phone's surveilling you. I said, yeah, but I said, I can go take my phone and put it in a Faraday bag, just like I do when I'm home. I can actually eliminate my phone from doing that. I said, yeah, I may not be able to turn it off, but I can put it in a bag and stop that signal. I said, I can't stop your signal. And I got my bill out, and literally in the fine detail, the print on my bill, it said that I'm responsible for turning in my own meter reading. So whether they can get to it or not, or what, and I showed it to him. I said, hey, I said, right here, I said, as long as you have the meter reading on this date, then you don't have to do anything with my bill. And I just showed it to him, and then guess what? It stopped. Never came back, never said anything, never charged me the monthly charge. And I basically just said, it's just educating myself, just reading their own literature. And that's how I stopped them from putting that on my house.
Well,
it sounds so easy. We all need to do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. That's pretty, I know I have one, and I know I should get it off. And I have put that kind of low on my list. Oh, so Julianne, because you know about smart meters too. So when they put my smart meter on, they told me that they had to put, it was something to do, it was tied to my social security number. And if I wouldn't give them my social security number, then I had to have a smart meter. But if I didn't give them my social security number, I had to have a smart meter. And I refused to give anybody my social security number, because even the Social Security Administration says, don't give anyone your social security number, not anybody. So I just haven't done it. So they put this smart meter on. So I guess I don't know. I'll have to figure it out.
They want the data. They're going to get it one way or another, or they're going to try. Yeah.
And speaking of data, so you are with us today. Oh, and bless your heart. I'm so sorry. You were sick last time.
Yeah, it was. I think there's something going around. People, I've heard a lot of people saying COVID's back, which I don't believe in COVID. but there was a little bug or something, and I hope you'll forgive me today. My allergies are going nuts. So if I have to blow my nose, I apologize.
I'm sitting at my desk, which is upstairs, and I'm looking out my front window, and we have a whole bank of red cedars out here. And for people who don't understand why they're called red cedars, it's the males that are red, because the pollen is red. And if you see a bunch of trees that are red, run the other way.
Yeah.
I was sitting here on yesterday, and I was going, what is that smoke? Is there smoke out there? Is there a fire? And it is all of the pollen coming off of that red cedar.
Yeah.
I was like, it's no wonder I have postnasal drip and have to sneeze every 15 seconds.
I know, right?
It's terrible. So we're going to talk about workforce development today.
Yep.
So here's my question to you. Why don't we want our kids to have jobs, Julianne? I mean, what is the problem with you that you just don't want our children to have jobs?
Right. I mean, I think that they should just stay home, don't go to school, don't learn a trade, don't learn anything, just sit maybe you should read your utility bill and figure out how to decline the smart meter.
That's great.
No, it's that I'm glad you asked the question that way, because workforce development sounds like something that we all want. So if you start saying that workforce development is a trap, which I usually say that, it raises eyebrows, because people say, what? Everybody wants a job. It's the same as economic development. That's one of those phrases that is broadly appealing, and people on the left, people on the right are all in favor of economic development. And that phrase, just like workforce development, has been tried and tested by focus groups and behavioral psychologists to achieve that end. So we have to know how they use the language in order to drive us into certain outcomes, let's say. But so why is it a trap? Why would I argue against it? Well, because a crucial element of workforce development is creating a pipeline to the workforce. And we know what a pipeline is. It ships a commodity, a standardized commodity that's been quality tested and approved, in order to serve the needs of the end receiver of that commodity, right? So when we
Wait
look
one
at
second. How you said that was unbelievably good. I mean, I think if people are watching and they didn't understand what you said, I'm not sure they're all together, because I've never even myself thought of this pipeline terminology that way.
it's
But you're
ugly.
making the point that yet again, we're propagandized by language. So, can you say that again? I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just had to say how, I mean, can you say that again?
I can try. you know, and this is one of the ways that I got into looking at all of these different aspects of the New World Order, is because I heard that phrase, pipeline to the workforce, at the university where I was teaching at the time. And I thought, you know, um, we don't talk about human beings as if they are something to be shipped through a pipeline. So that phrase is important to me on a number of levels. But yeah, think of what a pipeline does. It ships a quality tested, standardized commodity to an end user, and that user and his needs determine what goes into the pipeline. And when we talk about workforce development, we're talking about students, we're talking about human beings, adult workers who have to go back into the workforce. Those are the raw materials that are going to be refined through some system, workforce development system, whether it's K through 12 or post-secondary or VOTEC. All of those different refining organizations implement their quality controls and their rubrics to deliver a standardized product to the user. So that's what our workforce development programs here in Oklahoma and throughout the world are about right now. It's making a standardized, quality tested and approved commodity for use by business and industry.
Yeah. Well, and I want to just dovetail on that really quick, Julianne, that you keep using the word commodity, but in the essence of this conversation, if I'm not wrong, we're the commodity. People are the commodity.
Yes.
The students, the entire workforce, that's the commodity. That's basically an asset or an expense on some corporate balance sheet. I mean, basically, if you just
Exactly.
lay it down at the lowest level, that's all you are. You're basically
Yep.
just an asset or an expense, in a corporate structure.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly it.
But you know what that is, right? I mean, that's Marxism at its
Yeah,
heart, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people don't get it. They don't draw the ultimate conclusion there to the understanding that you have a small cabal of people that are up here who are pulling the strings, like we're all puppets down here, right? Of the people, and they've got to have us in a work, in a work environment. We are the workers, we are the workforce that drives their train. And I think people don't put that two and two together. And then, of course, the word itself, Marxism, has been anti-propagandized. So if you say that, then you're looked at as like some kind of a tinfoil hat wearing freak.
Yeah.
And, that's how they manage to get all of these systems going, is because if you call it what it is, they call you a freak or whatever, name that is. And then people go, oh, well, yeah, she's probably just a freak then. And right.
Yeah.
How
They do it.
propaganda works.
Exactly. I mean, they move you into the reactionary camp, and you're you know, blacklisted, you're on the fringe, you're one of those people, right? And it makes sense that they would do that. Again, think of our pipeline example. They with quality controls, you have to siphon off the dregs. And in this case, those of us who call it what it is, we're the dregs. So we have to be siphoned off and, dumped into the Arkansas River and,
With cement shoes.
yeah.
Well, I think the thing that caught my attention when we first started, Lynn Hoblitzel, who was partnered with Julia and I years and years ago, she was the one who was always on workforce development, and she was, would complain about it, and the governor's task force on workforce development, this is a bad thing. Well, we were all, kind of trying to finish up the Common Core thing, and I think we kind of neglected her perspective, but she did it. I mean, she kept on that for quite some time. And she determined that it was the National Governors Association that was pushing Mary Fallin, because Mary Fallin was the one governor who really pushed the workforce initiatives into this state. And one of the reasons why I was not at all a fan, but she was getting them from the National Governors Association, which all three of us talked about last time, is when you have these national organizations, this is where all the crap comes from. I mean, and people walk around going, well, I'm a member of the National Governors Association. Well, everybody ought to go, get away. Because it's these national associations that are the ones that are pushing down the crap,
Yeah, and Bloomberg, I think, I always want to bring up his name because most Oklahomans don't like Michael Bloomberg, right? And they need to know that he is very active in our state, funding all sorts of programs, including workforce development. So Mary Fallin worked with Results for America, which is funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. And, what is it?
Really?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I have a wonderful screenshot of her at a press conference, and I think our illustrious mayor, G.T. Bynum of Tulsa, is, on the stage too. But if you look at it, what is it? Results for America. Well, they're not really talking about America in terms of like the people of America. They're talking about that little cabal,
Right.
that manipulates business and industry and other sectors. And when they say results for America, they're saying we're gonna deliver the commodity. We're gonna, give those people the results that they want in terms of a human being that they list as capital, that has been quality tested and approved. So, and Mary Fallin was big into that for sure.
I muted my mic because I was afraid I was going to sneeze. You said the word capital. So can you dig into that term just a minute? Because people say this all the time, and HR, like human resources people, refer to the people that in the business as human capital. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, this is another instance of the manipulation of language. And it started, we were called human resources, right? So you have human resources development. And I mean, if we take a Christian worldview or any faith-based view, then most of the time, I mean, most normal people believe that human beings were created by God and that there is a distinct difference between us and the animal, plant, physical world, right? We have the capacity to reason and think about ourselves as knowers. We can put ourselves in someone else's shoes, and no other uh, part of reality in this world can do that. So there is something very different. But when you use the language of resources, human resources, that is reducing us to that animal, plant, physical life that is, it's that materialistic Marxist mindset, right? So we've moved, I think in the professional world, they've moved from talking about human resources to human capital because it appeals to this desire for wealth creation. And, the Oklahoma Works portal talks about wealth creation for all Oklahomans. And we sort of associate the term capital with creating wealth. Um, what we need to understand is that capital is just a means to an end, and it is going to serve someone's end, and it's supposed to produce these big results. So when we view human beings through a human capital lens, we're looking at what they can produce, and we're saying that their value as a human being consists in their productivity measures. So what do our human capital investors and developers want to do? They want to measure our capacities, and then they want to manage those capacities for the end of productivity or wealth creation that serves their needs. It doesn't serve the needs of the student, it doesn't serve the needs of the general population, it serves the needs of those who are ultimately controlling our economy. So, one thing that I always like to emphasize is that when you see that phrase, economic development or workforce development, that means a developed economy or a developed workforce. By whom? Who's doing the developing?
So
It
I don't
is.
know if you can see it, but can you see on the screen? I pulled
Oh,
up a
yes.
screen. So
Yes.
this is it's I don't know why it's not working for me now, but all you have to do is put in the phrase human capital and you bring up Marx. I mean,
Yeah.
literally bring up Marx. And here he is. This is a quote from him saying, capital is money, capital is commodities.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you just said? By
I
virtue
hope
of
so.
it being
I hope that's what I said.
By
Yeah.
virtue of it being value, it has acquired the occult ability to add value to itself. It brings forth living offspring, or at the least, lays golden eggs.
That is a fantastic quote because I mean, I need to make a screenshot of that because it talks about value, which if we look at workforce development and if we look at the new international economic order, it's moving toward and this is a buzzword phrase of theirs, the production or creation of true value. I put that in scare quotes, true value, not profits. So we're seeing the economy moving away from profit creation toward the creation of true value. And what that means in New World Order reset speech is it is delivering social outcomes, quality of life outcomes that are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And it's all a fiction, So that quote from Marx that says you turn something into a a creator of new value, something that can add to itself. Well, that's a big fiction, just like this goose that's laying a golden egg. That's a myth, a fairy tale. So, in that quote, Marx is pointing to the fictitious, mythical narrative that is underneath this entire system. This we're going to deliver quality of life, we're going to deliver value. Well, all of that really depends on managing perception, right? It's not something that is actually objective in their view.
Oh my gosh, I never
Our
thought of
perception.
that. You are so smart. I always love having you on because you are so smart, and you put so many things together for me because it's true. I mean, even when you were, and David and I were having this discussion the other day, gold at one point may not be valued. I mean,
Right.
value is all in the beholder, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
That's derived.
Yeah. And so that's what they're, part of workforce development is creating mindsets. Again, these are my buzzword identifiers, creating mindsets of value. So they want to shape our thoughts about what is valuable so that then they can build an economy that is based on that.
Yeah.
And in service to that economy, they're going to make sure that we're productive, thrifty little workers doing what? We're not going to be building actual things. I mean, some of us will for a bit, but for the most part, you're going to be contributing to this social emotional mindset that has been inculcated as valuable.
Yeah.
It
Well,
really
and,
is. It's
and
it's a
where,
fiction. It's
yeah.
all fake.
And where, let's go back to the very beginning of that pipeline, Julianne. It starts with education all the way down K through 12, where these kids are taught to be little automatons. There's no critical thinking. But to me, and this was always I ran for school board a couple years ago, and I have a financial background. To me, there is absolutely zero financial education taught to these kids, and it's done on purpose. Because if
Yeah.
you had financial education, you wouldn't settle for the value side of anything. You would understand how money works all the way from the very bottom to the top, and you would you yourself would be a creator rather than just one of these automatons that's produced through the school system if you had actual financial education, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, what's interesting about that is I think one reason they haven't done that is because we're actually moving away from money altogether. So the
Yeah.
new economic order trades in behavioral outcomes. So when you see corporations talking about creating true value, and this goes to how they keep their balance sheets, even, they're going to be saying, well, we have saved so many plastic bottles from going into landfills. And they're going to count that as an asset almost, and you're going to trade that sort of outcome with another corporation that has saved the whales or has fostered diversity, equity, and inclusion. So,
so you are gonna freak out because this is a weird thing. So this morning I got into my email. I'm going to share this screen with you. This morning I got into my email, and this was the email that I opened. And I don't know how well you can see this or not. This thing is not functioning for me today. There we go. That's better. All right. So it says, have you all heard about next gen personal finance? A mom in Arizona reached out to me about it yesterday. Arizona looks to be about to adopt this. Parent groups are very worried about it. NGPF is promoting something called behavioral economics.
there you
How
go.
freaked out are you?
Yep. There you
They
go.
want all states to adopt their standards and their agenda by 2030. Coincidence? The classroom instruction is online and parents don't have access to it. It's password protected. They fear that it will indoctrinate kids in the cashless society agenda with the central bank digital currency.
Yep, there you go.
An
So,
ed professor in Washington told me that it's common for finance ed, which would explain the next generation title.
yep.
So there you go.
Yeah. And, you know, we're seeing all sorts of financial literacy programs roll out. And those, again, you know, they sound appealing, especially to people who have noticed that we have a total lack of real understanding of finance and money matters. So when they hear that a financial literacy program is rolling out, then they think, oh, finally, we have needed this. But the new programs that are rolling out are actually teaching children, young people, adults who are, you know, re-entering the workforce after, say, you know, at time in jail. Even, you know, there's a lot of rehab programs going on that focus on workforce development. All of those financial literacy programs are teaching these people about digital money and the fiction of it, and how we're going to be creating value through our behaviors. So, you know, so I think my excuse me, Michael is right to say we have had this total lack of education in how to manage our real finances, and to understand what dollars and cents do over time. uh, that has been, I think, designed. And then it's going to create a demand for new programs that teach us, oh yeah, okay, we need to know how to use money. And we're thinking of money in the old terms, but the new
Yeah.
programs present money in these behavioral economic terms and trading value. Yeah, it's really sinister.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting to what you say. Well, so many things about what you say are interesting, but I'm just catching the verbiage. When you read 1984, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, they changed all the language. And that's how people
Yeah.
were, that's how they changed the whole system, was just by changing the language and making people believe that red was blue, or, whatever that was. And it's interesting in a terrible way, actually. Human beings are so malleable. I think we're pretty malleable, and we get used to things very easily.
Yeah.
And if one thing starts, well, I'll give you an example. So I was in college as Mac was brought to the public. So there weren't any desktop computers, right, until then. And then we had this little Mac. You remember the square little guy, yeah, I had one of those, on which I actually wrote my thesis and printed it out on a dot matrix computer. And you see where we are now, and we've gotten so used to where we are now. As the technology changes, we get more and more used to it, usually because it provides us convenience, and we are nothing if we're not creatures of convenience. We want to do it. We want the easy button, as I say often, for everything. And I think that's really one of our largest downfalls. We don't stop to critically think, because we haven't been taught to critically think anyway, but we don't stop to critically think, how is this next gen? Next generation. Oh, that's great. Next generation. It's going to be better because it's next generation.
Yeah.
And we fall into this trap every single time without going, well, wait a minute, what next generation are we talking about? What is this? And we don't think about it. And I can totally see how people would say, absolutely, we need kids to know about finance. They don't understand that finance now means a different thing. So, but it means to them, hey, we're going to learn how to use your money, but it's not the money that you were thinking about. And oh, by the way, and I think the worst part is China already has these systems in place. And all you have to do is talk to somebody who is from China. My husband works in a business where they have a lot of people from different countries, and China is well represented. And he has friends from China. And one of them told him recently, he wouldn't go back anymore. It's just become frightening how much surveillance there is. All of these things are tied to how you act.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get this if you don't act the way the government wants you to act. I mean, I don't think we're so into that mode of can't happen here, too
Yeah.
big to fail,
Yeah.
that we just keep falling in these holes.
Yeah. I mean, we are every bit as far along as China. I mean, I have a friend that I've met through this work online, Aman Jabi, and he was a Silicon Valley developer, and he has a lot of patents for uh, camera technology, and he's pretty in the know about these things. And we had a conversation where he said, there are more cameras per capita here in the US than there are in China. And we think that it's not happening because just like the financial education paradigm, we're thinking in older terms, and we don't recognize that this sleight of hand with the language has occurred.
Wow.
So we believe that our laws protect us. We believe that the Constitution is gonna it's going to
Means something.
constrain criminal behavior, and we think that justice is going to prevail. But these innovations and changes to our language, changes to our freedoms, those have all been slipping in very slowly. And now we really are at a point where I would say we're on parity with China. Now, our language might be a little bit different than theirs, so we still have in our public vocabulary, we're still talking about rights, and we're still talking about the rule of law, amongst ourselves, like Oklahomans on the ground. We still think that those things are here. But and maybe in China they have a different way of describing their relationship to the state than we do. But concretely, we are in the same situation. And you brought up the point about technology and convenience, and really I would say that our adoption of technology in every aspect of our life, and Americans love technology.
Yeah.
We've always loved
Yeah.
technology, right? And we love the thought of the future. I mean, it's this, even conservatives love the thought of the future, and they think it's going to be better and we can develop something that is productive for all. So if you marry those two things, our love of technology and our love of future progress, and you consider how that system that has taken hold because of our loves has enabled our language to be manipulated on a grand scale and very quickly. We all use the same terms, not knowing that they've been changed, because we're all interfacing with the same news stations, with
Fair enough. Yeah.
programs and operating systems that have been designed to use these words over and over again. We are sending out, let's say they call them explainers now. Isn't that just a condescending term? Explainer. It's so
Like mansplain.
I'm gonna, they don't say we're going to offer an explanation. Like now you can go online and you have these explainers, and HR department professionals can download these, leadership group professional, organizations. They use these explainers, and they all carry the same set of terms, and they're disseminated so widely. I think that is really looking at that dynamic and how that has taken hold in our society explains a lot about why our language is so constricted and why we're not even recognizing that. So, case in point, I happened to run into someone who is teaching at the university where I used to teach, and I was saying, something about the mass marketing that comes from all universities. It doesn't matter which one you look at. Every single university, every single high school, they send out, alumni mailings. And if you look at the alumni mailing of any school, you're going to see the same set of programs that are being touted. Community engagement programs, innovation programs, cybersecurity programs, addressing pressing problems and creating productivity. It's all the same garbage. And I would think that an academic would look at this and see that this is from a template. It looks like plagiarism. And I said, that should be a clue, right? That there's some coordination from the top going on when we're seeing this, again, standardized product in a newsletter. And she looked at me and she said, well, these are all the same because they're responding to the culture. And I thought, no, they're
Yeah,
actually
100%.
creating the culture.
Yeah.
They're creating it. And, that's the workforce development. That's the mindset development. It comes from the top through this set of, propaganda tools that uses a very specific set of terms over and over and over again. It's almost like neuro-linguistic programming or hypnosis.
Yeah. Well,
Innovation, sustainability, resilience, equity, collaboration, community, over and over again. But technology has helped us to, all adopt the same language in a way that we don't even recognize that we're speaking the new speak.
Yeah. And I want to make the point, Julianne, that's a lot of people, I think, kind of misconstrue like everything you just said because they think these things are like in our culture from our peers. They're
Yes.
not. These things are from the highest level, kind of, I would probably say, atheistic organizations of people that are, in banking, and these economists, they're not your regular everyday person, your legislator. That's not where any of this stuff comes from. You even look at a guy like, Mr. WEF, like Yuval Noah Harari. He basically said we're animals, we're hackable animals.
Yeah.
Now, and that's literally how they think about us, and they create these organizations now that put out these talking points, and they can do it, like you said, through technology, because now it's so easy to spread that same information to everyone at the same time. Yeah. And no one actually thinks about, hey, who is this, Ministry of Finance? Who is this, whoever, who is this Ministry of Truth? And, all these things. And we just don't even question it because we just see it so much. And then all of a sudden that becomes our truth. And then they change everything.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. People think that this is a sort of organic development.
Yeah, it's not.
Or that this is coming from the people and it's sold to us in those terms. Like I've just been reading about the new social covenant, which is
I don't even like the sound of that. Stop right there.
This is one of the precursors to
blah, 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 blah.
A precursor to the Great Reset. I like to find all of these early copies of this garbage. Well, this one's it's not too early. That I found, ones from way back. But this plan, it's a new social covenant for the 21st century, and it says it's issued by the WEF, and it talks about all the same stuff that's in the Reset, same template. But it says the people are demanding this. The people
Oh, yeah.
want this. Just like you see, in employment mailings, oh, well, millennials are demanding that their employers are community engaged. Well, guess what? That's a bunch of BS,
Yeah.
honestly, or they say Gen Z wants this. And so they market that to HR professionals who then try to change business culture in order to get the workers that we so desperately need. But the whole thing has been manufactured. So, to Michael's point, this is coming from the top. It comes from Deloitte, from McKinsey, from the huge accounting firms. And we're all just like, oh yeah, my neighbors down the road, they want equity and resilience. And we think that, but it's not like that at all. It's all been developed. It's a developed language.
So I want to go back just a second to something because it talks about, we're just talking about exactly the same thing. So when we first started talking about workforce development, when, Lynn brought this up and we would talk to people about it, and they would look at us, like we were tinfoil wearing, hat wearing weirdos. And they would say, but I want my kid to have a job. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants their kid to go out into the world and then have to struggle because they can't find some way of making money and, making their life worthwhile for them. So the first thing that they would say was, but I want my kid to have a job. So it's when they come up with these terms, it's like you said earlier, they go through all of these focus groups, which help them narrow down. And these focus groups are people who sit in a room and somebody will be, a facilitator will sit there and say, well, how do you feel about this word?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that word? And, it's funny, but just even saying that, I think when you look at where society is today, and I blame education, public education specifically. We don't think about things, we feel about things, right? And if you want to be religious about it as a Christian, I don't know how many times Paul talked about the fact that the heart is wicked among any other thing. Your brain is where you store all of your ability to put two and two together to make four. You don't do that here, right? I mean, you don't do that here. Here you feel something, but up here you say, oh, 2 + 2 is 4. So when they get to the point where they're trying to manipulate you, they're going to do that through feelings because they know that's what they can get to. And if you can get to those feelings, then you shut this off because this is over, it's overstimulated and it's shutting this down, right?
Yeah.
So I workforce development, like you said, means literally nothing, but people, particularly of my age and, possibly to, you guys as well. But when we were kids, if you found it up, if you thought, oh, I think I want to do this. And your advisor, or your teacher, your parents might say, but you don't have any training in that. And you go, oh, well, but they have training. I mean, I can get trained there to do this job. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would say, that's what I want to do. And you would go to the company and you would say, I really would love to have this job. And they would say, do you have any experience? And you'd say, no. And they'd say, okay, well, we have a training program, we'll hire you and put you in this training program. And, you can be trained for the job. So I want to stop and think about that whole process that I just described. Who decided what job they wanted?
The person, the individual.
The individual, because I always like individual first, right? Because we're all individuals. Persons, don't even describe it. We're completely individual people. The individual said, oh, that sounds like something I might want to do. Right? So it was that person's, the individual's idea. The company then decided, do I hire this individual? And if I do, can I train this individual? Is it in my best interest to use my assets as a business to train this individual to work in my company? Okay, so where was the relationship between the individual and the privately owned company? So am I wrong so far?
Mm-mm.
Right? So now what we have is we don't have a relationship with the individual and the company all and I don't know, maybe you would disagree, maybe we are not in the majority yet, but I think the majority now doesn't have a relationship as an individual with an individual business. We have a relationship with a commodity, with a state owned or state in some way interfered organization, and we have that relationship because economic development.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean,
if you don't understand what I'm saying, we'll go back to my favorite one. What's my favorite one, Michael? You remember?
which one?
The business that we keep throwing money at as a state taxpayer.
Well, there's a lot
The
of them. I don't know what your absolute
canoe,
favorite is.
my favorite
Oh
one,
yeah, yeah,
because electric cars are so awesome.
yeah.
And because the battery, yeah, let's not even get into that. We'll go down that rabbit hole. But the point of the whole matter is, so who's training people who go to work for Canoe? Really, the state is at this point, because the state has given money as economic incentives, right, to the private business. And now even the state wants to make sure that kids are trained in this kind of technology in order so that the child can move directly into a business that is supported by the state that will bring economic benefits to the state. Does that sum it up, Julianne?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing for sure, and they're introducing young children to these business and industry goals very early on so that they get used to them. And we love what we know, we love what we're familiar with. And so if you raise a child on electric vehicles are good and gas powered vehicles are bad, you're going to get that result. A person who is all in on the electric vehicle craze, which has been totally manufactured, right?
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I just
To the
have to
10th
throw this
degree.
in as an aside. My my husband drives a Honda. I've always driven a Honda too, and they've been good cars. But he wanted to do, what was he trying to? Oh, he was trying to jump the battery. It was very
Yeah.
cold a couple of weeks ago, and so he's trained as an engineer, and he can handle jumping a car. Well, on his Honda, he had to take off so many different parts, and and you had to have the manual out, and you had to have a specific set of jumpers that would reach. And he was so frustrated at the end, and he was like, look, when I was 16, I could do this on my Camaro like in 5 minutes. you know and he said, if I had been on the side of the road, we were in our garage, he said, I would not have been able to manage this one bit. So we're seeing that these new technologies they're not really helpful at all. So you're training kids to think electric vehicles are great, but then those kinds of technologies are something that we can't service ourselves
They
at
make us
all.
dependent
They
on
make
something else.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so they're training you to like this thing that's going to serve the needs of the corporation that is producing the thing, and it really limits your freedom overall. Um, Sorry for that aside, but
No. I mean,
the same thing
people need
happened
to
with the
understand this.
lawnmower too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but people need to understand this. It's
Electric is bad on it.
Well, and let's
But
just go from another angle. And I think about this and talk about this with my own kids all the time. Who is the real and the whole system is designed, and you probably know this better than anyone, Julianne. As a kid, as you're going through education, the ones that are going to wind up making the most money and be rewarded the most are the best little automatons that follow the rules,
yeah,
listen exactly and do exactly what the higher ups tell them, and that are the best trained. Because you take out, there's a huge difference between entrepreneurs of the 90s, 80s, and 70s compared to entrepreneurs now. These
yeah,
entrepreneurs now, literally from the .coms and on, those have all been heavily invested. And this goes back to something you were saying, Jenny. Every one of those companies are heavily invested by these major corporations and
yeah,
bought and purchased. And I mean, the CIA has its own venture capital firms. All these government agencies have their own venture capital. They identify these young people that can develop technology, or they're going to build a business, or they attach themselves to that very early. Where you go back prior to the .coms, and an entrepreneur was probably some guy that literally dropped out of college, built a huge business, employed thousands of people that were free, and gave people great lives to be independent. Those days are completely gone. You just have basically the best little automatons get the rewards because they follow the system. And there's no better example to me than what happened in COVID, to where you have an entire industry of highly educated doctors and scientists that completely went along with what the government told them to do. And if they happen to step out and say, no, I'm going to just question that a little bit, then they were completely villainized.
yeah. Well, and I think everything you said is exactly right on. I mean, you cannot have someone who questions the system. You can't have someone who presents an alternative viewpoint, because those are the dregs that have to get siphoned off
Yeah.
of the pipeline, right? Because really they represent an alternative viewpoint that appeals to our reason. You know, it appeals to our ability to think that no matter how much the educators from the state and the corporations try to indoctrinate children, they cannot destroy that God-given light of reason that responds to the truth. We're going to respond to the truth. So you have to silence the people who present the truth because they don't want others to respond to it. So I agree with everything that Michael said. And I would just add, you know, what you said, Jenny, about these state subsidized corporations. I think I think you're exactly right. And we've talked about it, how with the parental choice tax credit, that is a subsidy that's going to promote certain businesses at the expense of others. But what I want to add on to that is that we are seeing the merger and acquisition of our government, our constitutional government and representative government, by these multinational conglomerates.
Yeah.
Well, I
So,
think we made it, and I think we made that case in our last video on Friday. I don't know if you saw that with Carmen Greider, where we went over a particular senator and his campaign donations. And
yeah,
it took 3 slides to get all the businesses who
yeah,
donated to that particular individual. And I
Outside
want
of
to,
his district, outside of his own
oh, yes. That
voting
was the
district.
That was the important part, outside of the district. And I wanted to go back just a second to something Julia said, because I think
Yeah.
we've talked today, and the reason why I love having you on this show, and I'm just so pleased that you've said that you would be a regular, because you bring so many things to the forefront that really get us to think. Oh, and you've got another fan right here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. But back to this. So people are not putting 2 and 2 together to get 4, because again, like I said earlier, they want us to be emotional because it short circuits this part, right? So if we really stop and we think about it, why so many people got rid of their old cars and sold those in during the Obama administration because they wanted the money and they wanted to get rid of them. And they didn't put 2 and 2 together and go, I wonder if I'm getting this car that has such an enormous electronic system that can follow me wherever I go, determine how much gasoline that I'm using, what kind of gasoline I'm putting in my car, where I'm driving. Can I even fix this vehicle myself? Now I'm dependent upon somebody else to have to do that. And yes, people will say, I never could fix my car before. Okay, you may not have, but I will bet you dollars to donuts there was somebody on your block that did. You knew somebody who was a shade tree mechanic who'd go, oh, bring that over here. Oh, well, your carburetor's stuck here. Just a second. Let me see. I can fix that. You don't have that anymore.
Mm-mm.
So who's controlling you now?
Yeah, that's the big question, and it's all these ICT companies, information and communications technologies, that are investing in the kinds of
Oh, and that's true too. And you can't
infrastructure,
even get parts.
yeah,
That's
products, industry that is so dependent on computerized systems, robotic systems, automation. You know, these companies, which are at the forefront of the workforce development propaganda, are actually creating industries that will be manned, uh, scare quotes, manned by robots and programs and algorithms rather than human beings who are gainfully employed in those industries. So they're promoting a specific kind of workforce development that's going to make human beings who are workers obsolete. So we're really planning this there, when we participate in those kinds of initiatives, we're planting the seeds for our own, uh, economic destruction,
so I
really.
need to ask you something. Do you know who Mike Tucker is? I mean, Mark Tucker is.
Yes. I mean, I've read the Dear Hillary letter,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it lays it all out,
I
right?
love you so much.
I
People
mean,
don't know about that. I wonder if I can find that and put that up in the stream while you talk about it. Talk about Mark Tucker, because that's where we are. People say, well, there aren't any jobs here in America. Blame Mark Tucker and Hillary Clinton for that one.
yeah, exactly. I mean, this letter that he wrote was read into the congressional record. So you can pull this up. It's not on the deep web, but it talks about, profiling students and moving, like basically controlling the whole economy by profiling students from the very beginning of their lives and fitting them into this system of automated computerized control. And I've been shuffling through some papers here, and I can't remember what. I only printed a few of the pages, but this is from the state workforce development program. And let me just point out that some of the goals for youth are a fully deployed individual career and academic plan. So this is like is ICAP, most of your education audience will know about that program. And it's integrated with all students within the secondary school system as a preventative measure. And it talks about we need to increase job training opportunities, as well as focus on enculturation into appropriate professional and soft skills. So I read this right now because they are building this giant automated system that requires profiling students in real time and measuring and managing them in real time and changing what their soft skills are, what their feelings are, what their mindsets, everything that they can change about those students to fit them into this automated networked workforce. They will through technology, through profiling and surveillance. And it really is an anti-human system. It's evil. That's all I can say. It's a
Well,
wicked
let's say,
system.
the youth of this world has been tricked into giving, there is no privacy, and they willingly and lovingly give all their data. Their entire lives are documented in detail all day long, every single day on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to this letter just 1 second because I've got it printed up. So you'll notice that Mark Tucker is head of the National Center on Education and the Economy. What are we talking about? Okay. Now, dear Hillary, I still cannot believe you won, but utter delight that you did pervades all the circles in which I move. I met last Wednesday in David Rockefeller's office. Now, this is the same David Rockefeller of the Rockefellers, the giant from the 20s. David Rockefeller, who said in a letter that was highly publicized, that went out on all kinds of, you can Google that one as well. David Rockefeller, who said, well, so many people accuse me of being in a cabal and wanting to have one world government. And to that, I say, absolutely, I guilty as charged.
Yeah.
That's David Rockefeller.
Yeah.
And then you keep going on down here and it says, what follows comes in three places. First, a vision of the kind of national, not federal, human resources development system the nation could have. This is interwoven with a new approach to governing that should inform, scare quotes, that vision. What is essential is that we create, now this is the big one, right? Oh, here, Julia's got it. Good. Go to this, spread this far and wide, okay? What is essential is that we create a seamless web of opportunities to develop one's skills that literally extends from cradle to the grave. This is why this was written in the congressional record by somebody who had a set of cojones, who understood that this was the cabal, the one world government plan for all of us. And hello, it's there. Read it, understand it. Put two and two together, push back, to develop one's skills that literally extends from cradle to grave and is the same system for everyone.
Yeah.
Young and old, poor and rich, worker and full-time student. It needs to be a system. Now, here you go. Here it is, Julianne. Driven by client needs, not agency regulations or the needs of the organization providing the services, guided by clear standards that define the stages of the system for people who progress through it, pipeline, people who progress through it, and regulated on the basis of outcomes-based education. We're educating a kid for an outcome, not for what that kid wants to be when he or she grows up. Basis of outcomes that providers produce for their clients, not inputs into the system. So we can get out of that now because I think people pretty much understand exactly what we just.
Was that from the 90s? Was that like in the 90s, Jenny, that letter?
I've forgotten exactly when it was that he wrote that.
I think it was in 1990.
Yeah, I think it was in the early 90s.
Yeah. So, and
But
this
anyway,
has been going on well before that. It started in the 20s. But what I'm saying is if you think Julianne wears a tinfoil hat,
I do.
It's because you don't know. It's because you haven't looked these things up. It's because you're not educated enough to know that she's very 100% right.
Yeah. Well, don't forget Rockefeller's grandfather said competition is a sin. They don't want an educated people because then you'd have competition. They'd have to deal with, someone they can't control. And that's really what it comes down to. That whole education process basically removes the responsibility of the individual child or person, from their own actions and doing their own thing. They've turned into a victim, and everybody knows once you have a victim, you have a controllable person. You can control that person at every point from that point on.
Yeah.
Julia said it was written in November 11th, 1992.
Yeah, 92.
So yeah.
92. Well, I want to just, I know we're probably going pretty long here, Jenny, but I want to.
No, we've got about another 2 or 3 hours. Julianne said she'd just stay with us forever.
That's fine. Well, I want to make a couple points that people just may not realize, that maybe is a little more, hits us here at home a little more. You take a company like John Deere, go talk to any farmer that has newer John Deere equipment, at least in the last 20 years. You can't have anyone outside John Deere work on that equipment. You can't buy any part out. There's no more duct tape and baling wire to go fix your combine. You have to, and John Deere, if you don't pay the fees and whatever, all their stuff, they'll shut you down. And people just do not realize the extent of how this technology has moved through these major corporations and how they can control things. It is unbelievable. And then I mean, I could go for hours with you on EV, Julianne. I mean, it is like just the absolute worst.
Michael and I despise EV.
Yeah. I do. But you take a guy, let's look at just for a second, let's look at Elon. Okay. Here, whether you love him or hate him, you think he's the best thing, he's the worst thing. Elon would not exist without the massive government subsidized in EV, all his government contracts with all his space stuff. He works 100% for the government is who the guy works for. 100%. That's who he's accountable to. I mean, no matter how you want to cut it, without the U.S. government or all these other government interventions into his companies, he would not be here.
Yeah. You've got to have this merger of both. And when we look at this new economy, it's a merger of the giant corporations and the government. And you have to have the government involved because it can fleece the taxpayers and it can, print money right now. I mean, I think I just wrote an article on my blog. I think that is going to be sunsetted. That power, it's going to be taken over by private money issuers. But for now, you have this enormous power of the government that by and large people still think is legitimate. So we're law-abiding citizens. We are creatures of habit, even though we love our future visions of progress. Really, we are most comfortable with what we know. And we think that if there is a law that's passed or, some regulation that's come out through, a clean standard process, by and large, we're going to comply with it, and these giant corporations need that perception of legitimacy to be manipulated in their favor. So Michael brought up the fiasco with COVID. Who was doing the major enforcing? I mean, you saw a lot of private businesses doing this and issuing mandates based on claims of the need to manage risk, right? Or, it's a liability issue. But you had to have the government coming out and issuing mandates, your local governments issuing mandates to really add legitimacy to these corporate efforts. And so, the the influence that our corporations have on they're actually that the corporations, I shouldn't say are, that the corporations have on our government is it is total, I would say. But they still sort of depend on the government's cooperation, because what the government does lends legitimacy to that action. So, maybe I know we've got to wrap it up, but maybe next time we can talk about this inclusive capitalism program. Is just another name for New World Order, Great Reset. But it comes from the WEF and Rothschild Embankment Project on Inclusive Capitalism, and they talk about this new social contract as being between business, government, and American workers.
Yeah.
Not citizens, not
Right.
individuals, but we are workers. And so maybe to bring it full circle to your point, Jenny, this is Marxist in its very nature. Like, you are not an individual human being with a heart, soul, mind, experiences, memories. You are a cog in the machine. And we're going to see employers really putting the pressure on their employees to comply with all of this behavioral garbage that's in ESG scoring. It's in corporate social responsibility initiatives, and those are going to be supported by the state, but the corporations are also going to direct what the state develops. So it really is a mess. And if we don't get control over our representatives now, we're going to lose the ability to do so in the future. So if I can make a case for preserving our lying, corrupt government, it is that right now we still have some sway over the politicians that are selling us out. But once the corporations and the government have fully merged, it's going to be like trying to call John Deere and argue with them about, their policy. They're going to say, forget you, small-time farmer. We've got a million others of you where you came from.
Don't like it.
So I want to show you something.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, you know what is so funny to me is you go back, because really in the 90s when I really started kind of really paying attention to everything, back when I was in high school and stuff, you couldn't talk there. You were crazy if you thought there was some type of New World Order, or even let's take the lowest level groups like the Bilderberg Group or the Trilateral Commission. Some of those, they didn't even exist. You're crazy if you even said they exist. Now, all these organizations, all these things, they're the ones, they're the authorities on everything. They're literally out front, doing podcasts, doing, constant media, they're all the authorities. They know everything. It just drives me absolutely crazy that in such a short amount of time, they've gone from so behind the scenes to now they're so, they are the authority in the open. And people they don't even question anything. They're just like, yeah, well, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're totally unabashed about doing this reset. You just,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, I never use the dark web for anything. I just use Google, and you can find all of their plans right there. Sometimes Google even brings it to me now.
So I want to point out, this is Michael ruins people. He's ruined me. So he had me read this book because he had me read another book before that called Killing of Uncle Sam. And it's taken me a while to get through this book because I listened to it,
That's a big book though too. That's
well, I need to order it because I need to see some of these things that I'm hearing. But I've been, and I suggest everybody get this book. I mean, it's absolutely, if you still somehow think in your mind the government is of the people, by the people, for the people, you got to read that book, because I just keep reading this bit going, wow. Okay. Well, so we're basically owned by the Vatican, the CIA, and the mafia. I mean, that's who we are. We're just that's what it is. So I don't know, to close it out, Julianne, we can talk more about workforce, but what I would really like to do, because I know this was kind of it's going to depress some people. I mean, this podcast is going to depress some people, and I hate that. And then I think other people are going to go, oh my gosh, but this is embedded. Then I just quit. I'm not going to do anything. I'll just, sit here on the couch and eat my bonbons and wait for the end, So we don't want any of that happening. So if you had a couple of things that you could say to people to kind of, I don't know, make them feel better, to give them a purpose, to tell them something that they can do, what would it be?
Well, I think because this control system runs on managing perception,
Yeah.
then we know how to attack it, right? We've got to help people's perceptions move along toward the reality of the thing, right? And we also know that, um, the people who are behind this, if we look at like what I talked about with the dynamic between needing the government to sort of sanction activities, that's still ongoing. Like the corporations and the controllers still have to have the government's cooperation because the American people still have this lingering trust in our government, right? So I would say that gives us an opportunity to really step it up in our vigilance over our elected representatives and the people who are on the different regulatory agencies. If we understand how valuable government action is toward promoting this agenda, then we can exert a counter force. And, and so we've got to do it. We've got to get people uh, united together to push back on our representatives and make them more afraid of us, the people, than they are of the bankers, right? And we have to appeal to their native sense of justice and say, look, this is what's happening. And we have to be relentless in showing them, here are the documents, here's what's going on. And you get people in all the small towns in Oklahoma, because everyone's going through the same thing. I do a lot of work on comprehensive plans. Everybody's got the same comprehensive plan. And we get the people from Sepulpa and the people from Chickasha and the people from Guyman or Guthrie everywhere. And you say, look, here's the template. This is what they're doing. This is the language. They're doing it in your town. They're saying it's innovative. It's not innovative.
Yeah.
It is plagiarism. It's the same thing. So we get people to understand it. Then we pressure our neighbors, the people who live by us and represent us at the state level. And we say, you are shooting us all in the foot, and there will be a reckoning, or you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're selling us out. There will be a reckoning. So we do that. And then also, and this is perhaps more fun, is, we get to bust up the corny narrative that everyone has, even the people who work in the professional world, they all think this narrative of innovation, diversity, inclusion, resilience, equity, sustainability, they all think it's garbage, but they just go along with it because, oh, well, this is what we have to do. Well, the more we talk about it and show how much garbage it is, and we make it mainstream to criticize these 40 under 40 initiatives and the leadership organizations and the little ropes courses, community building initiatives that everyone hates, then the better off we'll be. So we get to sort of, take that 90s slacker position and say, look, we're not playing your innovative collaborative leadership game. And we've got to make it cool to be an outlier again, you know? And that's
Well,
fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
We
no,
can do it. We
a
can.
100%. But I think there are a couple other things too that I just would say. So if you can, I've said this, we've said this for forever. If you can get your kids out of public school, get them out. Always be aware of what your kids are learning. Don't allow your kids to have Snapchat, TikTok. I mean, take all of these things off because they're getting, it's not just at school. I mean, Julia pointed this out earlier on. It's coming in through electronics because,
Yeah.
they know they can get to your kid when you're not with your kid because you're going to want to more than likely try to parent your kid. And they want to short circuit that and get in the middle of that. So anytime you can prevent your child from being on social media, anytime you can block that off, that's your job to do. Get them out of that. Don't watch regular television. Don't watch 4, 5, 9, 25, whatever. Find alternative media sources. Julianne, make sure you stick your, we'll stick your website on. Tell me what it is again.
It's heartsoverhexagon.com.
That's right.
And teach your kids the buzzwords. My kids,
That's a good point.
they range in ages almost 6 to 12. And, they've watched me do this for a long time. And now they like to find examples of these marketing tropes and the buzzwords. They love it because it's like unlocking a puzzle. So you teach your kids here. I have a slide, and I'll send it to you, Jenny.
Okay.
Top 10 buzzwords. It's the best slide I've ever made. And
Awesome.
It just explains these top 10. And once you see it, it's like looking for a new kind of car on the road. And my kids always point out Teslas. And they're like, ooh, Tesla. But once you start to notice them, you see them all over.
Oh, yeah.
Teach your kids the buzzwords because then they will have a defense against the propaganda and they'll love it. And then we bust up the 40 under 40 leadership garbage because it's not leadership. It's just indoctrination. We can do this.
A couple of other things too, besides, staying in touch with your representative and letting them know and being involved in elections. And I mean, you have to be involved. I mean, I don't like it either. This is spring. I've got to be putting carrots in. I've got carrots and peas to put in. I don't have time for this nonsense. But that's the whole point is, that if there are more of us than them, and by the way, there are, just so that you know, and if we would just stand up like in that cartoon, it would ruin the game. So anytime you can foil try not to buy an all electronic car. I mean, try to get out of using as many electronics as you possibly can, pull yourself, out of that in a way. So I think there are steps. And, even if it becomes the very first thing you do is wrap your brain around the fact that America isn't what you think it is. I mean, it can at least make that one step because that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
That's pretty huge. If you can even make that one step, then you can make the steps further on. And then once you've done that, again, you have to talk to your neighbors, you have to talk to your friends, you have to talk to your family, you have to talk to other people and wake them up as well, because an awakened group of people are going to be the ones who are going to stand up. So, Julianne, God bless you. You're just the best.
Well, it's easy to talk about this stuff when you have two intelligent people who are fun or good conversationalists. It's we could just go on for hours. So I love it. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad. Seriously, I'm so glad you're on because it's in the beginning part of that part with the pipeline. You'll see that all over everywhere after I edit that out because it was the best. If people can't get that, I don't know. I may just continue to bang my head until it's bloody because you said that so particularly. I mean, it was just perfect. I don't get how people can't get that. So, and Julia is also your friend. So
Thank you, Julia.
All right. Well, here's what I would love for you to do. Send me that slide and we'll put it up on probably something, maybe even on a separate post, and put that up with
Add it to some of the shorts.
yeah, with your video, so that people have, like a one-stop shop of places to go. So Julianne, thank you so much. You're going to be on again next month. I think I have your date. It's going to be Wednesday the 13th.
That sounds great. I'm
So we'll
looking
see.
forward to it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jenny.
yes, ma'am.
No, thank you. You are really sincerely, you're the best. And I can't wait to see you every month. So I will talk to you soon. But thanks again for being on today.
Thanks, Jenny.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Oh my gosh. I love that woman.
Well, she's the best. Well, you know what? I just hope people understand and realize there is a complex system put into place to turn every one of these kids into a cog in the wheel. There's no outside. I want to empower these kids. I want, and you use the word, wake your neighbor up. I don't even like to use the word wake because that's almost like woke. I want your neighbor to be informed. I just want them to have some information,
because this is what we want.
Yeah, I think they'll come around. Yeah, freedom. There you go. But I agree with everything Julianne says. I mean, it is just it is so controlled from the top, and it's so hard for us to believe that. It's just so hard for us to believe, hey, there is a cabal, there's a group of people, but I explain it to my kids this way, Jenny. I said, we live in a polarized universe. There's up, down, left, right, dark, light, good, evil. And if you can't come to have the conception to realize that we're good, we don't think the way evil thinks.
Yeah.
Evil thinks in a completely different. Evil doesn't have a problem maiming and killing and destroying and doing all that. We would never think like that. So it's so hard, I think, for most regular, everyday, hardworking people to understand, because we can't even conceptualize the way that evil would actually work. Well, there are people that are evil, and those people that are evil are in, whether we want to believe it or not, they're in positions of power that have control over the masses.
Well, I think that's the reason why the church fell.
Yeah.
I mean, I really honestly do, because I remember when I started, so many people, arguing with me over what I would say, the too big to fail, it's America, America. And it's what you said. We who think in the light, let's just say that. We who think in the light, it's very hard to think in the dark. It's very hard to believe that people would do something evil. It is just, and I kind of like that about humanity. I mean, if we weren't like that, I don't know how we would have hope. I don't know where hope would derive from if we didn't have some kind of naivete, if we didn't keep some of that. So I'm kind of glad that humans are like that, because it does give us the ability to, continue moving forward. But we do have to be aware of the fact that people are bad, and sometimes they're pure evil.
Can be pretty bad.
But I mean, I think this is the other thing. People don't understand that people can be purely evil, that they can literally have. I don't think they understand that. And you have to recognize that is true.
No, you can't relate to, as a good person, you can't really relate to someone that would do something so malicious to someone else. You just can't, it's too hard to understand that.
And it is. But then you also have to realize that there are a lot of people who may not be evil, but they're going to respond to money and power.
Yes.
That's how they function.
Yeah.
And so even though you can't really put them in the evil, they're not going out trying to evil people.
Well,
I think I just invented something new.
Their God, their happiness is the material and the
correct.
and the pursuit and consumption. I mean, that's why we're called consumers,
Yeah.
because we consume, these things. We consume the material.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you just one more thing quick, Jenny. I literally just watched one of these. I watch a ton of all these, like, New World Order guys. They all do podcasts and video. They talk about all their technology that's coming and everything. Well, I was literally just 2 days ago watching a brand new one about a guy was talking about the AI chips getting put into your
Yeah. Oh,
brain
yes.
and all
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
transhumanism, and he literally, I mean, the light went off in my brain, because so many people, they think, hey, the robots are never going to come in and
Yeah.
take over, the whole
Right.
Terminator deal. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But what this guy just said, he said, look, he goes, once you get that brain chip, we're going to turn your surgeon into a precision instrument, because now we will control his hands, and we will operate the AI that goes
God,
through the
that's
brain chip will
terrible.
actually do your surgery to absolute robotic perfection, because we will have control of the autonomy of that doctor for that time period. And he was saying, we'll build houses. They'll have an entire workforce of people with chips, connected to some type of technology, AI, that technology actually controls, your autonomic system and think. So yes, we're not going to have the Terminator robots like standing outside. We're going to have the brain chipped
Yeah.
AI, control their physiology. And I mean, I need to find that and watch. I need to watch it a couple more times. It was just completely opened my eyes to, and really that's what's coming. That's probably, that the actual plan.
Oh, well, I mean, if you go back to the 20s and you look up transhumanism, because again, it's not as though things weren't bad before the 20s, but for people that don't know, I mean, that's when in America, everything went sideways, was the 20s.
Well, and you had the entire eugenics movement back
Yeah,
then. Hitler came
correct.
over and studied the
Right.
eugenics movement in the United States before he even did the entire genocide over in Germany. I mean, people don't even know that he gave Margaret Sanger one of the highest awards you could get in the German, ranks. I mean, it's so crazy, but that's where education comes in. If we knew those things, if we taught those things, if your normal kids said, wow, I can't believe this stuff goes back 100 years, and they
Yeah.
were already talking about it, and things would change.
Well, the cartoon that I put up, I think that the other thing, people say DEI, so many Christians buy into that stuff. Oh, well, we have to be an equitable society, blah, blah, blah. And they don't understand the bottom line. But here's the bottom of the bottom line. When I begin to see you as a thing other than human, when I begin to see you only as a Black person or a white person or a gay person, or you fill in the blank, when you become something other than human, right? Because you have something attached to you, some identity other than human, then now it becomes a fight over identity and not humanity. And once that fight begins over identity, there is no way that the game is going to go. People are not going to rise together. They're not going to come together to fight off, the people playing the game on the top of our backs. They're not going to do that because they're too busy fighting over their identity and not their humanity.
Yeah.
So DEI is absolutely from the pit of hell for that particular reason. We should all look at each other as members of humanity.
Yeah,
We're just
human race.
simply humans. And once we recognize that we're humans and we don't have a separate identity outside of that, then we can come together and we can really do things.
Yeah.
But the powers that be know that.
Well,
And the
divide and
only way
conquer,
that they can keep
the
power.
oldest strategy in the world: divide and conquer.
Yep. That's the only way that they can fix that, is by making me fight you because your identity is a beard wearing man, and I don't want you to be a beard wearing man.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fight you over that. I mean,
Yeah.
it has to stop. We've got to quit being emotional, but we've got to get rid of, in my opinion, you got to get rid of public schools at this point that are just forcing all of this stuff. I mean, they're just absolutely a cog in the system.
Yeah. Well, can you look at any school and say that they're performing and producing better results in kids now than they were 50 years ago?
No,
There's
but
probably not a
it's
single
funny
school
that
we
you
can-
say that, because just so that you know, Michael, because I think you're not super smart, and so I'll help you. Okay. It's all about money, and we don't give public schools enough money.
Yeah. Well,
And that's really the only thing. I mean, because every child has a cha-ching, cha-ching. There's like a coin slot in there, and they only become educated if we just, flip the coins in that coin slot, and that's how they become educated.
now you're right. I didn't know that.
I think so long as I can
That just went-
educate you on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, we're going
now
to go
that I
on.
know, that makes complete sense. Now I understand the entire picture. The man behind the curtain has been revealed.
Yeah, it's all about money.
And that curtain, wasn't that curtain green also?
You mean like your background earlier?
Yeah.
Chroma key, so we can make it anything we want.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. Grande, on Wednesday, next Wednesday, you and I are going to have to come up with a topic, because we lost our speaker for Wednesday. We lost our guest for Wednesday. So we're going to have to come up with something. Friday, we're going to have Nick Rosado, who's going to be on, who's going to talk to us about this healthcare freedom forum that she's doing. And I do think Julianne, and you too, Michael, you both, when you were talking about COVID, kind of hit on the healthcare system. It's been completely bastardized, and usurped by the government. And I think Mick's going to in part talk to us about that. So you'll want to be with us for Friday, and you'll certainly want to be with us on Wednesday, since Michael and I will come up with something.
Well, there's plenty we can talk about, and maybe I'd pull up a little bit of stuff on the founding fathers a little bit there too.
Maybe so, because people don't know who those people are anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you again for today. Always love being on with you, and certainly.
Well, Julianne, she's great. There's no doubt about that.
No, Julianne she's amazing. So, All right. Well, you have a great weekend. Everybody out there, have a great weekend. Thank you so many of you for tuning in. If you want to support us, please go to rope2.org. We've got a big donate button on there, and, feel free to throw us a couple of bucks, and, we can certainly use them. And we appreciate any support that you give us, but we totally, above anything, I appreciate the support that we get from you when you tune in and you comment, and then you share our content with other people. That's really what I appreciate the most. And I know you do too, Michael. So, thank you again for being with us, and please make sure to continue to tune in and share with your friends. So thanks again for being with us, and have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Talk to you soon. Oh, next Wednesday.